Hello, my Aloha tribe, and welcome to the Aloha Perspective, where you get a little bit of something and a whole lot of everything. Happy Thursday. It is Thursday. I'm doing the double mics again because I have no idea when they're going to go out. And so welcome. We're on day number 3 of Confidence Vampires. So the first day we went over Confidence Vampires. I'll reread that just as kind of a recap of the first 2 days, since yesterday was Self-Care Wednesday. Confidence isn't about being the loudest in the room, but about trusting yourself enough to share your voice when it matters. When we hold back due to fear of judgment, we deprive the world of our unique perspectives. True confidence grows when we focus less on being flawless and more on being authentic. Each time you face a challenge with honesty about your abilities, acknowledging both strengths and limitations, you build a more resilient foundation of self-trust. Good morning, Muddy. How are you? Um, so yeah, that was day 1, and it was just kind of letting us know what exactly Confidence Vampires is about. And the first 3 were the constant critic, the spotlight stealer, and the backhanded complimenter. So today we're going to do 4 through 7, and I want to remind everybody that um, if any of this resonates with you, don't feel ashamed, don't feel bad. Um, Fix it. Fix it. If it's something that hits you sideways and you're kind of like, oh, man, really? Then fix it. So, I mean, that's the best we can do, right? Is just do what we do and fix it. So, I also told you guys that one of these I recognized in myself. And and just as a recap again, when I talked to older sibling, I really got down on myself and I was like, oh my God, this is me. This is totally me. And so, I went through the entire list with her and I'm all like, please, you have to be honest with me. If any of these are me, you have to tell me. And so, we went through it and it turns out just number 7 is one that really resonated with me and one that really kind of stuck out for her. And I'm grateful to have the people in my life that are willing to be honest with me, because shadow work in a way is teamwork, because you need someone there to help you through all this. I mean, whether you choose to go to therapy and get counseling through your shadow work, because some shadows that we face can be pretty harrowing, if you will. But if you're not a person that really trusts that or believes in it, or, I'm not here to push anything on anyone. I know what works for me, but I also have a very good support group. So aside from therapy, I also have a wonderful support group. And I'm grateful for that. So that's always helpful. And you don't want to just surround yourself with yes people. All right. Yes people never works, because you don't fix yourself. You also don't want to surround yourself with confidence vampires who are constantly tearing you down because maybe you're a people pleaser. I tend to think, and this is just my humble opinion, that people pleasers may be the ones that migrate towards the confidence vampires. Not always, but I mean, the ones that just make the excuses for them, right? That just sit there and go, well, and that's just how they are and whatnot. So as a recovering people pleaser, I have noticed that there are some of these people that it took me a long time to walk away from them. And you owe that to yourself. You deserve to have boundaries, and that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. Maybe I'll pull a card from the Dragon Oracle deck. All right, but then we'll get into the confidence vampire thing, and we'll wrap that up in a nice little bow. So today, let's start with the Eternal Victim, number 4, the Eternal Victim. Just so you know, I am reading this off of my computer because it just didn't feel like writing them all down. They're pretty lengthy. So no matter what challenges you face, the Eternal Victim has it worse. They position themselves at the center of all suffering, which invalidates your own struggles. Their perpetual crisis mode demands constant emotional support while offering none in return. After enough time with them, you'll feel guilty for even having problems of your own. Now, this kind of reminds me of, in a way, the backhanded complimenter. But I was talking about, oh no, the spotlight stealer. That was it, the spotlight stealer. Now, the spotlight stealer was number 2. And that's one where people are just kind of like, oh, guess what I did? Oh, hey, I just graduated from college. Oh, yeah, really? Well, I just got my doctorate. you may have gotten it last year, all right, but let the person have their moment. Allow someone else to shine. Okay, you don't always need to be the spotlight stealer. Now, a lot of times, I've said this before in the last show. To me, there are three kinds of people who will be confidence vampires: a narcissist who just really doesn't give a flying crap, whether you care or not. A person who's probably been through a lot of trauma, and possibly the person healing their own trauma who didn't get enough attention as a child, who maybe just trauma doesn't just mean, like, I mean, trauma comes in all shapes and sizes. It could be emotional, physical, sexual. There's just all kinds of traumas. Okay. Emotional, to me, is very difficult to deal with because it doesn't just leave an outward scar. It leaves one on the inside that a lot of times people will sit there and go, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you got that scar. I'm so sorry this happened to you," or "I'm so sorry you were abused that way when you were, young." But emotional stuff, that really sticks. And a lot of times the emotional abuse comes from the people who we are closest to. I knew somebody, it was their mom. Their mom was emotionally abusive, and it's and it gets a little harrowing, and then you spend a lot of time trying to help them move through that so that they can enjoy life a little bit better. So the eternal victim can sometimes stem, or anybody who's a confidence vampire may stem from that. But I shared one about the spotlight stealer, and I should have saved it for today because the eternal victim, if you weren't tuned in on Tuesday, I actually know somebody. Well, I used to know somebody like that. I can honestly say, just from what I've seen, from afar, they have grown. I did have to set boundaries at one point, but they've grown. They've found what they needed in life. But this was the person I was talking about. That I talked about when I hurt my knee, and just kind of like, and I hurt it the second time, and it was just, while it was healing, it was just kind of like a trial of errors, but sometimes it would just really just kind of flare up and get swollen. And my mom would notice. She's my mom, and she knew I had torn my knee. It's like, "Oh, can I, babe, can I get you some ice for your knee?" "Sure, thanks." And then all of a sudden, my friend next to us, who was just fine walking up and down the stairs to my parents' house, walking all over the house, suddenly and magically, "Oh, my ankle hurts." And she just starts rubbing it. "Oh, my ankle hurts." And it's kind of like, I mean, I didn't even ask for the ice. My mom just brought it to me. And I was just kind of like, okay. But it's, I mean, I'm not laughing at them. It's just kind of like, when I think back, it's like, wow. But I mean, I think we've all been kind of needy at times. And being needy from time to time, we're human. We're going to do this. But the eternal victim, they don't know how else to get attention but to kind of ride within their pain. And I will say this, I never, well, as far as I know, because like I said, I went through all of these with older sibling. I asked her if I'd done these things. As far as I know, I'd never played the eternal victim with other people. I have tried to be relatable, but I haven't compared my experiences, unless they asked. But I will say this: I became the eternal victim in my own life. I didn't know how to be happy because I had sat within my trauma for so long, and I had hid my trauma for so long, that even when I had the relief of finally being able to talk about it and open up about it in my adulthood, it just, I didn't know how to move into joy. So be careful that you are not just eternal victim with other people, but be careful that you're not one with yourself. A lot of times it is hard to find joy because we're all we've known is emotional trauma. And by that I mean, like, just the trauma from trying to deal with what happened, to any of us, and any sort of trauma that may have happened in the course of our lifetime. So for those of us that may have had it when we're really, really young, and we don't have that place to go back to, find a place in your life that you really, where you really had no worries. There's 1 year in my life that I remember just, I just cut loose. It was just kind of like, yeah, this is who I like being. And that was the person I ended up going back to. Now, it turns out that person was the one just ignoring everything that happened and decided, I don't want to deal with that anymore, until it built up, and poof, it exploded. But I did manage to figure that out. And when I found that out, I found that I balanced my light and my shadow a lot better. But if you are someone who you were a little bit older when this trauma happened, try to find a point in your life that you can go back to when you were happy before this happened. That doesn't negate the fact that it happened. What it's doing is it's teaching you that, you know what, you are not the trauma that happened to you. You are a survivor, and you're trying to be a thriver. Okay, you want to go from surviving to thriving. So, sometimes that eternal victimhood that we put ourselves in can sometimes translate into us, you know, kind of taking the spotlight away from someone else who's, trying to heal their own thing. So again, no matter what challenges you face, the eternal victim always has it worse. They position themselves at the center of all suffering, which invalidates your own struggles. Their perpetual crisis mode demands constant emotional support while offering none in return. After enough time with them, you'll feel guilty for even having problems of your own. Don't. If you need to, set boundaries. All right, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. So, number 5, the passive diminisher. I'm curious about this one. This vampire specializes, in subtle dismissal. They don't actively criticize, but consistently minimize your feelings or experiences with phrases like "you're overreacting" or "it's not that big a deal." They make you question the validity of your emotions until you no longer trust your own perceptions. Oh, I know some people like that. I do. And, I will say this. I don't think it's intentional from the people I know. Now, yeah, Sammy saw, I know this person too. And yeah, I think we all, sorry guys, I think we all kind of have people like this in our life. We may even sometimes do it, right? But, oh, well, you're just overreacting. Yeah, so I think the phrase hurt people really goes hand in hand with the passive diminisher. Um, when people don't know how to heal their own traumas or heal their own issues, they sometimes tend to, this kind of goes back to the shadow work, right? The shadow that we talked when we were doing the shadow work series last week and the week, well, the last 2 weeks before this week, we talked about how, in the shadow, sometimes when we get upset because um, we see the behavior in somebody else, but we can't fix it in ourselves, right? We sit there and go, well, but we don't always recognize it. And so it kind of triggers us, or it puts that knee jerk reaction going out there. And yeah, see, Sammy, I know Sammy, and you know what? I didn't even come up with that. There is a phrase out there: hurt people, hurt people. And like I said, I don't think they do it on purpose. A lot of, in the way back days, I don't want to classify any generations here, but in the way back days, um, a lot of people were taught to just shove it down, stick it in the closet, whatever. Don't think about it. Everybody had to walk out of the house with a smile on their face, even if things were crappy at home. We're a little bit more of an open society now, as far as mental health goes. A lot of people will say it's weak. A lot of people will say, oh God, they're emotional again or whatever, because I think a lot of times, people don't deal with their own things. So they will tell you, what did it say here? You're overreacting, or it's not that big a deal. And they'll minimize your feelings. And here's the thing, feelings are important. One of the things I learned after going through my own, healing on my shadow journey from my own trauma and having suppressed it for so many years was that, you got to feel it to heal it. You got to feel it to heal it. Um, I use I even had one for my emotional eating where it's like, you gotta heal it, not no, I can't remember how it went. It's like, heal the pain, don't feed the pain, or something like that. But that's a whole new story. In fact, I'm going to talk about menopause next week, because I had some interesting thoughts about that. So that's messing with my shadow right now. So yeah. So anyways, the passive diminisher, this vampire specializes in subtle dismissal. They don't actively criticize, but constantly minimize your feelings or experiences with phrases like "you're overreacting" or "it's not that big a deal." They make you question the validity of your emotions until you no longer trust your own perceptions. Now, be careful that you're not that person that everything has gone wrong in your everything. Don't be the eternal victim, and then everyone sits there and tries to make things better for you, and yeah. Sammy says, and a pause messes with every doggone thing. It really does. It is. It's an upending idea in itself. Baby sibling and I were talking about that the other day, and she's 15 years younger than me. She didn't even have to worry about menopause yet. But anyways, but I think it's always in the back of my head. So, or not my head, but our heads. If you're a lady, so there's some things I want to talk about that. Some stigmas and other things, but let's get through the confidence vampires first. However, like I said, if it comes to the passive diminisher and you're a person who, you may legitimately going through something. When I was 16 years old when I finally spoke up about my trauma, and I didn't speak up about it on purpose. It just kind of happened. I was in class in a career and family study class, and now, I kept it a secret for a very, very long time, for years. I mean, my grooming started very young, even before my parents had the talk with me. When you're going to school, if anybody's inappropriate with you, you got to tell us. And even to today, and up until my mom died, it's like, well, why didn't you ever say anything? It's like when you're groomed. I mean, we didn't have a term for it back then, right? But you're basically, we called it threatening, and there were these things, and you don't want to believe it, but when you're so young, you're kind of like, but that's what was so confusing about my healing, is that being with my parents, I always felt safe. I never felt like any of the lies that my abusers said to me were true. But when I got older and I realized they were lying, then all of a sudden it's like, well, this will happen to me or that'll happen to me, and your parents will blah, blah, blah. And then it's like all of a sudden you feel weirdly protective of the person that's been hurting you your whole life. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous to people that don't understand. Or they'll sit there and say, well, I'll tell your parents and they'll be ashamed of you. And there's just so many, manipulative things that they do to you to make you think that, you're just, you're nuts. And it's hard to deal with. But I was in career and family studies class, and it came up, and the teacher says, well, if you know anybody, and I couldn't help it, my tears just started flowing. And one of my classmates raised their hand and said, Miss So and so, I think Shelly Marie might know somebody. And so she took me outside, and I told her, and of course, you got peeking eyes going out the window. And I talk with my hands. So hopefully they were thinking I was talking about somebody else, but I told her, and I just told her the basics. I didn't. It took me many more years of figuring things out and putting two and two together to realize how bad the abuse actually was. And then all the memories started flooding back, and I truly believe that doing the shadow work helps with that, because it unlocks itself as it's necessary. But in the time that I had finally said something, I told some of my, some close people to me. And of course, these are emotions that I'd held down for many years, even by the age of 16, many years. So I couldn't help it when the tears would come. And, my friends would make comments like, oh my God, you'd cry if a blender broke. And, I mean, I probably would. Um, things happen in life that just kind of, they're our final button that gets pushed. And it kind of hurt, because I mean, I had very supportive friends and they weren't trying to be mean. But I think after a while, none of us really understood why this. It's like, well, you already shared it. Why is this still happening? Why is it still bothering you? Because there was so much in there that I didn't realize was still in there. So, you know, do your best to not be the passive diminisher. Listen to the person's feelings, hear them out, because, somebody is being brave enough and courageous enough to share this with you. Now, if this is something that they decide is something that becomes an attention getter for them, that's a whole different problem. That turns into the eternal victim. And you want to help them with that too. Okay. You may not be able to tell them anything. You can sit with them. You can say, look, do you want to know what I think, or do you just want me to tell you what, you want to hear? And because only they can truly heal themselves. The only person that can do the shadow work for the person doing the shadow work is that person. And we can try to help, we can try to offer advice, but don't offer unsolicited advice, because a lot of times you're going to get shut down and they might shut down. So, um, older sibling, really did her best to try, well, in the early days that I've talked about in the past, about really trying to help me. But, she would just make suggestions. She wouldn't say, well, you need to. She's all, have you thought about blah, blah, blah? Have you thought about seeing someone? Have you, professional? Have you thought about, antidepressants? Have you thought about talking to your doctor about that? So it was more like trying to plant the seed than it was, well, you should. Because then the person feel, you might victimize the person all over again. I know that sounds cheesy and kind of, whatever, but it can. Feelings are wild. Feelings are wild. You just emotions can even be more wild. So just, you know, take note and be cautious, but don't dismiss other people's feelings, okay? Anybody going through trauma, anybody going through hurt feelings, anybody who's lost a job or lost a partner or broken up with somebody, they don't want to hear, oh, it'll get better. You're overreacting. Stop. Their heart has been broken. Okay, their heart has been broken. Or like when people die and, everybody's there and then after the funeral, everyone's just gone. Oh, that's so sweet. Sammy says Laura is so wise. No, Laura's been through it. I mean, I guess that's what makes her wise. Her wisdom comes from experience, because Laura has been through it, and she went through it at a time when mental health was very stigmatized. But she has always been so open with it, and I am not just proud of her. I am so grateful for her for having that. But really, kind of the moxie and the chutzpah to just say, you know what, f you. Yeah, I had mental health problems growing up, but screw you, because I'm going to help as many people as I can so they don't you know, what do you call that? Fall off the radar. So, so don't be a passive diminisher. All right. If you are one of those, do what you can to find ways. Instead of saying you're overreacting, just say, you know what? Would you just like me to sit here with you? Or if you're, instead of saying it's not that big a deal, just say, I'm really sorry this hurt you. It may not be a big deal to you, but it might be a big deal to them. It's like, I'm really sorry that hurt you. I mean, when I lost my job, a lot of people were sympathetic, but it took me a long time to get over it. That was 15 years of my life. And it was a huge part of my identity. I was someone in that company, maybe not a big wig like the other people, but every time someone had a problem, they came to me. Every time someone needed something, they came to me. Every time another office needed something, or IT stuff done, like getting equipment and whatnot, they came to me. And all of a sudden, I went from being somebody who had a weird kind of office manager status to no one. But what I didn't realize is that I was still Shelly Marie. But it took me a while to find her because I had her so tied into that identity. I mean, people still come to me now, Shell, what is blah, blah, blah. And then, I mean, sometimes even my dad, he's all, wow, how'd you find that so fast? You use keywords, guys. Here's a secret to the internet. Here's a sidebar. All right. You want to find something quick on the internet? Keywords. All right. I'll use an example. Okay. Recently, dad and I are watching one of our Padre games, and one of our first baseman got hurt, after batting, got his bell rung pretty hard. So you would just go, Arise or Luis, Padres, injury, recent, stuff like that. And it'll bring you all these articles. That's why research is not that hard for me, because I know what to Google. So, oh yeah. So Sammy says, in a perfect world, we would all learn from our own experiences and pass the love and understanding on to others. This is legit. That is legit. And here's the thing. That's what people are doing now. That's what people are doing now, but they're kind of getting raked over the coals and either being called flower children or hippies or woke, or, and I mean, using woke in the most incorrect way possible. I'm going to also do a show on wokeness. All right. Because I think people need to finally learn what the word actually means instead of using it as an insult. All right. I used to be offended when people called me a hippie or a flower child. Now I'm just kind of like, yeah, give me a ring of roses to put around my head or flowers. All right. But, or the hakule from Hawaii is a strand of flowers around your head. So, but yeah, I found that in my healing, a lot of my views on things changed radically. And um, there are certain ways I approach things now. In a way, I think sometimes I used to be a passive diminisher when I was younger, probably before older sibling met me, because that's what I learned. It was a learned behavior. It was passed down. A lot of my mom's responses to things, like when I told her about my depression, well, you have to be stronger. You just have to learn how to be stronger, which to me is the same thing as you're overreacting. Or, when people poo poo the fact that I've been to therapy, and it's like, no, therapy saved my life. Well, I'm glad for you, and you can hear the sarcasm in it, but it's just kind of like, it used to bother me, but I don't care anymore. So Sammy says, a woke show is probably needed. Not sure why it is considered a derogative term. I agree. Well, you know why it's considered a derogative term, because a certain party decided to make it a derogatory term. So we're going to fix that. I don't know how many people it'll reach, but I am going to try to fix that. So fix it we will. So, but anyways, number 6, the conditional supporter. That support comes with invisible strings attached. Their support comes with invisible strings attached. They're in your corner only when your choices align with their expectations. The moment you deviate from their script, their encouragement vanishes, replaced with disappointment or withdrawal. This creates an exhausting pattern where you feel pressure to sacrifice authenticity for approval. So here's the thing. When I decided to do confidence vampires, this is the one I struggled with. I don't even know how to cover this one. Um, their support comes with invisible strings attached. They're in your corner only when your choices align with their expectations. I am sure we've all been through this with somebody. I'm sure we may have been that person at some point if we were hurting and not dealing with things. But, um, oh, I know. Okay, it just hit me. Thank you, whoever gave that to me. So last, the last episode, oh no, Sammy. Sammy says she knows this kind of person as well. So, um, God, I'm sorry. Maybe a drink of wisdom water will help. I don't even know. I'm not even sure why I called it that. But, let's see. The moment you deviate from their script, their encouragement vanishes, replaced with disappointment or withdrawal. This creates an exhausting pattern where you feel pressured to sacrifice authenticity for approval. I have a person in my head that I could talk about, but I'm not really sure if it covers this. And it's a person that I've talked about in the past who, really kind of, oh, I'm glad we're friends. I'm glad we're this. I'm glad we're that. Okay. Sammy said she needs some wisdom water. Get a cup, fill it up, and drink it. And pretend it is wisdom and information coming from the water. Just ask Archangel Raphael to bless it with wisdom. So there you go. But yeah, but this is a person who was always, well, I'm here for you, I'm here for you, I'm here for you. But then, whenever they would have a bad day, they would take it out on me. And then they'd kind of just be all grumpy, and then somebody else would ask what would happen, and then somebody else would be at my desk going, well, why did you say that to her? Why is she mad? Blah blah, what happened? Because people are literally that nosy. And I'm all like, and I would tell them the truth of what happened, and because they've known me longer, they're like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah, but I said, don't say anything to them because they're obviously going through something. Just be there for them and listen. And then one time I called this person out on it, and they didn't talk to me for almost a week. And, this was at work, and I was just kind of like, wow. In fact, it was kind of an up and down kind of thing, to the point where, you know, um, when I left that job, they're like, oh, well, I guess we can be friends again. And I'm like, what do you mean friends again? I thought we were always friends. It's like, you're always at my desk. You're always talking to me. You're always doing this. You're always doing that. And, but I knew that there was a lot of things that they were going through. And once I realized that, I did knee jerk. It did trigger me at one point. I did say my piece because I talked to older sibling, and that was the advice she gave me. She's like, just say something. If they're really a friend, they'll be there for you. And we talked. We talked after that when they said, well, I guess we can be friends now. It's just kind of like, I didn't realize we weren't. But I had set boundaries, and I did it very subtly. And I think they thought that I was pushing away, or that I just thought that we should be, like professional friends at work. And I was just kind of like, no, I said, we can still be friends. It's like, I always thought we were friends. I mean, we still talk to this day. And but those were older issues, and I think that when they realized they'd lost their punching bag, they kind of, withdrew a little bit. It was a bit of a conditional support system. And so, and older sibling says I've never done this, but I don't know. I feel like maybe I have. I think we've all done this, from time to time, but when it becomes a problem where it's something consistent with somebody, where it's kind of like, well, no, you need to do this and I want you to do it this way, or, maybe you want to do something for Halloween, right? Something as simple as Halloween, and your best friend or whoever, or your partner or your sister or your brother or whatever it is, are like, well, no, I want to do this. And you're like, no, you promised that I could pick the costume this year, and this is something I really love. And it's like, well, that's too blah, blah for me. And then all of a sudden you end up just kind of going along with them. Don't do it. Do your own thing. You don't have to have an entire group of people doing the same thing. Just do your own thing. I remember one year my little cousin, we were supposed to be Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and my little cousin, she was about 5 or 6 at the time. She wanted to be Snow White. Then all of a sudden, we all get there and we're all dressed as dwarves for her, and she comes out as a baseball player. We're like, okay, the baseball player and the Seven Dwarfs. But I mean, she was only 5 or 6, so I'm not using that as an example. It was just a memory I had. But in terms like that, be who you are. Don't let other people dictate who you are. All right. You are you for a reason. You are authentic for a reason. You are unique for a reason. And when you let people, steal your light, when you let people just constantly diminish your feelings, or, you allow them to diminish your feelings, you're going to lose a part of yourself. And if you're asking, how can I let people diminish my feelings? When people sit there and say you're overreacting or it's not that big a deal, my reply now is, well, it is to me. And no, I'm not. No, I'm not overreacting. This really does hurt me. And it's like, if you can't understand that, then, I'm sorry I brought it up. And sometimes they'll either let it go and you both move on to a different subject, or they realize, oh, well, I'm really sorry. I didn't realize how important that was to you, because they're catching themselves now. I mean, like I said, when my my mom was one of those people raised by a generation that says, you know what, you just need to be stronger. You just need to push through it. You just need to move past it. But I found out when it came to other people, oh, like my cousin was, like my cousins, a bunch of my cousins are like, oh no, we always went to Auntie, and Auntie would pray with us, and she'd do this. And it's like, did she ever tell you to be stronger? Oh no, she just said, well, I understand. I'm like, who was this woman? But I realize it's because they were her nieces. I'm her daughter. And she wanted something bigger for me, or whatever it was. But yeah, Sammy said it's good response. It brings their behavior to light in a more gentle way. And yeah, I mean, it just really kind of happened by accident when somebody says, well, you know what, it's not that big a deal. And I'm like, it is to me. It hurt me. And sometimes it's their behavior you're calling out. It's like, why are you saying this shit to me? Seriously? It's like, well, don't be so sensitive. It's like, I'm not being sensitive. How would you like if I turned around and did this to you? Well, you wouldn't, because that's not who you are. And it's like, it could be. Here's the thing about some of us sensitive people. You push us a little too far. It's like Popeye with the can of spinach. You eat it and you pow. I mean, not necessarily physically, but with the words. It's like, no, you know what? I'm going to shut down and you're going to be gone. See this? That's my boundary. you know, so just, I'm really sorry. The conditional supporter was a little bit difficult for me, but I think I did the best I could. All right. So again, their support comes with invisible strings attached. They're in your corner only when your choices align with their expectations. The moment you deviate from their script, their encouragement vanishes, replaced with disappointment or withdrawal. This creates an exhausting pattern where you feel pressured to sacrifice authenticity for approval. You know what? Ah, yeah, Sammy says we're back to do unto others. I just realized why my mom also came up. Um, when I talked about my depression, my mom, that was not a part of my mom's plan for me. And like I said, she would say, well, you just need to be stronger. She would never talk to me about it, you know. And because of that, I just thought, okay, well, mom says I need to be stronger, so I'm going to be stronger. And I didn't get the help I needed for a long time. And if I did try to seek help or I did try the antidepressants, I didn't tell her. I didn't tell her at all. I should be like, "Oh, are you on thyroid meds?" It's like, yeah, because we got a running thyroid problem, and the ladies on my mom's side of the family. But I wouldn't. She's like, "Oh, are you taking anything else?" No. And she would see the pills, but I mean, like the extra pills, and I'm like, no, just vitamins stuff. I didn't want to tell her because I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to talk about it because I felt so ashamed. I mean, I felt like I was disappointing her. And you guys, I really want to say this and stress this. I don't want anyone to be mad at my mom. All right. My parents grew up in a very different generation, very different generation. I mean, I know that a lot of generations span a long time, but baby boomers spanned a long, long time, almost 20 years. So, your early boomers are going to be a lot different than your later boomers. Now, mind you, I love them from A to Z, no matter what year they were born in. It's just, I think sometimes we're faced with these things and we get to decide how we react. So if somebody sits there from a generation, instead of putting them down, we can learn a lot from our baby boomers, all of them, because they all have had different experiences. It's like early Gen X and later Gen X, right? I mean, I'm right in the middle. I'm right in the middle of the Gen X generation. I mean, it started in, I think, 65 or 6, 64, 65. I don't know, one of those. I'm a 73 baby. And boomers, Gen Xers go all the way up to 1979. I believe 1980, 81 is when millennials came along. Might be 81. So, and they're kind of called like X millennials, Xennials or something like that. And but yeah, I'm right in the middle. So, I mean, we just pow. We just learn to fight back eventually. But and I mean, again, not physically, just when we take a moment, take a beat. All right, just take a beat to think about what you want to say, because you don't want to hurt anybody. If you're feeling hurt, the worst thing you want to do is turn around and hurt that person back. Just say, and like that's why I came up with, that one day when they're all, well, you're just overreacting. It's like, no, these are my feelings. It's like if you can't respect them, that's fine. I don't care. But let's see. Sammy says, my parents are a lot like yours, as you said. They were just taught differently. My parents were born in the World War II era, and they were taught to not complain as well. Yeah, my parents were born in 45 and 48. My dad was born 2 months after the official end of World War II. And my mom was born in 48, but my grandparents, that's where they got everything from. I mean, my dad kind of had shitty parents. So, sorry, but that's not really a secret in this family. But my dad I always said to my dad, it's like, how come you're so different from your own parents? And he's all, because I promised myself if I ever had kids, I'd be the parent I didn't have. I'd be the parent I didn't have. My mom had pretty decent parents. I love my grandma. My grandma's pretty awesome. And well, was, she's gone now. But actually all my grandparents are gone now. But still, like I said yesterday, we didn't call my grandma, or the other day, we didn't call my grandma the general for no reason. So, you can imagine what my mom's upbringing must have been like. So, just pretty tough. And I don't mean regimented and rigid, but I mean just tough love, tough love. So, and my mom was like that. So, and my dad could be that way too. And, of course, my parents are married. So, they take each other's sides, then ask questions. But I don't have a problem with my upbringing. I was raised by two wonderful, wonderful people. And but it's just it's about, like Sammy said, even your dad was trying to break generational cycles. Yeah, he was. So yeah, definitely go dad. And um I think because my mom had a pretty decent childhood growing up, that she didn't think about it as being a generational cycle. But it is kind of strange though, because I don't know what my great grandmother was like growing up, but I could see how hard she was on my grandma. But to us she was just funny and delightful, and but she was, when I think back on it now, she was pretty hard on my grandma from time to time, where so I can see, where that passed down. And I mean, I never had children of my own, but I try to be the cool aunt, but I do discipline. So, it's kind of like, hey, this is my family. If there's an adult in a room, you listen to that adult. That's how we were raised. So, I try to be fair and just. I try to be fair and just. But but yeah, so it is about breaking generational cycles. And had I had kids, I think the one opportunity I did have, when I think back on it, um, it still hurts from time to time. It was a very difficult choice, but I was not in a good place, and I don't think I would have broken any generational cycles. So in a way, I'd like to be the martyr of my family. I'm kidding here, right? But I'm gonna continue with this. I'm gonna be the martyr of my family and just say I took one for the team to break all the generational and ancestral cycles of this family, so that everybody can enjoy being a parent and whatever, while Auntie Shelley just sits on the sidelines and watches. So but yeah, all joking and stuff aside, there were a lot of generational and ancestral cycles I did break, and that's a whole nother thing to talk about. So, anyways, let's get to the last one. All right, the armchair psychologist. Yes, tis I, the armchair psychologist. This vampire has you all figured out, or so they think. They diagnose your issues, explain your motivations better than you understand them yourself, and frame your reasonable reactions as psychological problems. You're just saying that because of your insecurity, becomes their way of dismissing any perspective that challenges theirs. I'm not proud of this. I'm really not. And I can't even say I'm a recovering armchair psychologist, because I just realized I was one this week when I read this. Not proud. Not proud, but I am proud of this. I figured it out, and I didn't need anyone to point it out to me. When I read it, I was like, oh my God, sibling, this is me. And she's like, what? And I read it, and she's just like, well, she didn't want to be mean, right? She didn't want to say anything. And she's like, well, and I said, just say it. I said, this is me. She's like, well, it can be. And so then, like I said, I read 1 through 7 again with her. And when we got back to 7, she's like, no comment. And I think she finally found her courage to say no comment, but I know, and she knows I know. And even the other day, she saw, you're trying to armchair psychology me, and I'm like, no. Instead of saying you are, I'm asking, are you okay? Are you this? Here's one that I absolutely hate. Are you, when you're cranky, right? When you're cranky, there, for women, it's always two things. Are you PMSing, or are you hungry? I can't tell you how much that drives me nuts. Absolutely drives me nuts. I mean, the hungry part, I can't be mean on that, because I should know better and just make sure that I always have something on me to keep my blood sugar up, because I'm not diabetic, but I am borderline hypoglycemic. So if my blood sugar gets a little haywire, oh, I'm either super giddy and laughy, or super quiet, or just wow. So I gotta watch that. But um I'm going to use two prime examples on who I've done this to. I have done this to my dad, and I have done this to older sibling. And it's because with my dad, he and I grieved in very different ways when my mom died. And I'm sure there's stuff. I mean, we just talked about, my dad breaking generational cycles, and I'm sure there's things that still kind of hang over his head from when he was a kid that he doesn't even realize, because, his thing is, you push it down. You just push it down. And For people like me, when you push things down, they manage to come back up. It could either be yelling at your TV, yelling at the car in front of you, or whatever. And then you expend that energy and you're like, okay, I'm good. I'm good. Or we let things get too deep under our skin. And I think my problem is that having discovered therapy, I just wanted to help everybody. And I'm not trying to make myself look good. I'm not trying to, be that person. I was trying to help other people because until I discovered shadow work, I didn't know how to help myself. So I figured if I turned around and tried to fix other people, then that would make me feel better. But it didn't, because their issues are not my issues. The way they handle things is up to them. The way they deal with their grief, it's up to them. If they want me to sit with them, or they want to talk to me, or they want me to hug them or whatever, I will be there. I will be there. But it's not my responsibility to sit there and say, well, I think you should do it this way. Or, you're just reacting that way because, you're hurting, or because, you're this or you're that, or, I know you and you're insecure, and, you're a people pleaser. And even if they are, I mean, Sibling and I both admit we're both people pleasers. I'm a recovering people pleaser. She's still working on it. And she sometimes gets mad at me when I say that, but she is. And I think she recognizes it. But again, it's not something I can fix for her. She has to do it herself. And I think that's the hardest part about when we are trying to be an armchair psychologist and say, well, I know how you're feeling. Because I think in a way it's transference, right? It's projecting. We're projecting. If we're hurting and we see someone else, I mean, they may just put their head down for a minute. Maybe their neck hurts and you're like, are you okay? And maybe you're feeling something inside. Maybe you're feeling that, that anxiety and that angst and all that stuff. And so Sammy says, understandable, though anytime any of us find something that helps us in some way, we want to share it with others so that they can be helped too. Yeah, no, that's exactly it. I mean, we do want to help. We do want to share it with other people. My problem is I was playing the role of psychologist or therapist. I was the one sitting there going, well, I learned this. So, and that's just it. When what worked for me may not work for other people. I mean, some people won't need shadow work. They'll go through shadow work and go, well, I don't know why everyone thinks this is so hard. It was not that bad, because their shadows may be very, very, at the surface. They may not have anything deep and sad and, that need all the gory stuff that needs to be, healed. And then there'll be other people who are so open to healing that be like, oh no, shadow work. Oh yeah, it stung a bit, but it was great. I learned a lot about myself. But when we resist it, that's when shadow work becomes hard. When we resist the healing, when we resist the, all the pain and everything, because we are afraid of going through all of it again. We are afraid of hurting. Nobody wants to hurt, right? And nobody wants to sit there and go, oh my God, I'm writing some stuff down about, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek sort of book, but it's about, the last 25 years of my life. And well, I don't know why it's still hard to say, but being single during that time. And, I've learned a lot about myself. I've done a lot of things. But there, I was writing about my boyfriends, and I don't name names in this. I don't want to, I'm very clear on to not make them look bad. I'm just kind of going back over the relationships and how the patterns kept repeating themselves. But there's one that I got to, and that was one of the first really traumatic relationships I ever had. And, emotionally, I should say. And I had to stop, and I haven't written in like 3 days. And I realize it's a shadow thing that I have to figure out. Plus, I think the idea of menopause is kind of upending my shadow side as well. So these are a lot of things that we have to think about. And the reason I'm bringing those things up is because, somebody comes along and they're like, oh, I'm going through this. Like, well, maybe it's because blah, blah, blah. No, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. Instead of telling someone you are, I'm trying to phrase it as, are you? Are you okay? Are you feeling this? Are you feeling that? And it's still kind of the same thing, but I'm just trying to give them something to think about. And I won't do it again. They need to figure out their own healing. I am not the person that can heal everybody. I can, it's like that phrase, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Well, you can lead the people, but you can plant the seeds, but they have to water it. They have to grow that garden of fruitful thinking themselves. They have to pull the weeds of pain and shame and all that other things themselves. They have to prune their own garden. You cannot prune their own garden. You are like the flower shop guy or girl or person, right? You're the one selling the seeds at the hardware store or the plant store, going, hey, here you go. Good luck. You're giving them all the tools that they need, but they have to figure out how to be successful at it. And being an armchair psychologist is not going to help them. In fact, I realize it might even make them shut down more and really not want to talk to you, because they might think that every time they share a feeling with you, you're going to sit there and analyze them. And I know I am not proud of this. I'm not proud of the fact that this has been me up until this week. And I'm realizing that that was still just a habit, because I've found a lot of my healing. I'm still finding, or things are still coming up slowly that need to be healed, but I'm healing, I'm dealing with them a lot better. I'm dealing with them in real time. I journal about it. But I think the habit is that when I see someone hurting, it reminds me of what a struggle it was for me. And I have to remind myself in those moments, my struggle may not be their struggle. My struggle is my own struggle. Their thing is their thing. Even if they're relatable, it's not mine to fix. If they want to come to me and talk to me about it, if they want to come to me and ask me what I would do or what I think about it, then you can share. But don't sit there and, super analyze your friend. That's what therapy's for, your family member. That's what therapy's for. That's their choice to ask you if they want help. A lot of times we want to offer help because, like Sammy says, we just want people to feel better. We want people to get better, but again, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So be that person at I don't know, at the nursery. That's what I'm trying to think of, the garden nursery. Be that person at the garden nursery. If they ask you, hey, what do I need to plant a successful mental garden? Hand them the tools, hand them the seeds, and say, you know what? I'm here if you need support, but this is a lot of this you're going to have to do on your own, because I am not sitting in your backyard. I work here. You know, I'm just selling you the stuff, but you got to figure it out. But hey, come back and let me know how it goes, or keep me posted. Or if you have any questions, call me. Call me, reach out. So we can be supportive. Be that supportive person, all right? Don't be the conditional supporter. Be the open-minded, open-ended supporter. Be that person that's there for them, because there is going to be a time when they overwater a plant and it might look like it's dying, but it's not. You might have that advice right now. Granted, this is all metaphorical, okay, because I am a brown thumb, but when it comes to the garden of the mind, I'm pretty good at that. So, and I think that's the problem, is I've had so much therapy that sometimes I just want to help, and it's not my place to help, especially if they don't ask, and especially if they don't. Older sibling and dad are on very opposite ends when it comes to, psychology. Dad thinks it's a bunch of hooey. Sibling stands by it. I stand by it because I know what it's done for me, but I also know that it's not for everybody. It should be, but it's not. But you know what? A proper mental health is for everyone. Upstanding, feel good about yourself kind of mental health is for everybody. Healing is for everybody. Feeling good about the day, having, outnumbering your bad days with your good days. That's what's important. But again, there is a line in the sand that we are not allowed to cross. We want to, we can peek, we can look, we can stand there, but until we are asked, it is a line that we cannot cross. And as I've said before, as the armchair psychologist, I have done that. It's like, well, not everybody cries when they grieve. Not everybody shares it. Some people will just keep it to themselves. They'll just do it in private because it doesn't need to be a big thing. I was very fortunate because I had older sibling. An older sibling had lost her mom. So she knew that my pain would be different, but at the same time we met in that same area of having lost a parent, and she's lost all three. She's lost her dad, her stepmom, and her mom. So, and yeah, I've been there through her with everyone. And that's the funny thing is, the only thing I ever said to her when she lost her mom the first time, and I just kind of repeated when she lost her stepmom and then her dad, was, she's just like, why does this hurt so much? And why does it still go, happening? And blah, blah, blah. And I said, you're never going to get over it, but you're going to learn to live with it. And that helped me a lot. You're never going to get over it, but you're going to learn to live with it. But it's also that grief doesn't have a time limit. And I think that's where I forgot, is that, some people will just hurt until the end of their lives. Sissy Joe's dad is going to carry his pain until the day he passes, and I'm sure that's a long time from now, but he had to bury his daughter. He had to say goodbye to a child of his oldest, and that hurts him. And when Sibling and I have had breakfast with him, it's, it always comes out at some point, and we try to regale him with stories because he never realized how close we were. But yeah, we try to regale him with funny stories and goofy things that we've all done together. And I think for a moment it brings him some peace. But it always ends with, I just can't believe she's gone. I miss her so much. And you can hear the pain in his voice. And the first thing you want to do is make it better and just say, hey, you know what? She's watching down on you. She's watching down on her brother and her nieces and nephews, and, live for that. But you can't, because that's his journey. It's not ours. So we can, if you pray, you can pray for them. You can gratitude for them. You can do all sorts of things for them, but you cannot fix the problem for them. Right. So that was that. So again, we had so to recap, we had the constant critic, the spotlight stealer, the backhanded complimenter, the eternal victim, the passive diminisher, the conditional supporter, and the armchair psychologist. And tomorrow we're going to talk about how we can break free from the bite of all of these confidence vampires. So I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day. Sammy, thank you, Muddy. Again, love you, love you, love you for so much for coming on. I love the back and forth and the extra thoughts on this, because I think it makes it more interesting, and it's always good to have a perspective of somebody else as well. So yeah, so have a great day, everybody. I'll see you back here tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, Facebook Live. All lives are public. Anybody can watch under Shelley Marie Lucas. And again, you can find me on YouTube under the Aloha Perspective, or on TikTok, Instagram under Shelley Marie Lucas, the Aloha Perspective, or Blue Sky, Threads, Shelley Marie Lucas. You get the point. And on Twitter, Shellbell's Quest. All right. So love you too, buddy. And I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching.